Gerry Anderson's final SUPERMARIONATION series, The Secret Service, is a generally obscure and forgotten about series in the minds of the British public, coming at the end of a groundbreaking run of a filmmaking franchise at the height of its empire. The Secret Service was shown in a minority of regions sporadically across the UK in 1969 and the early 1970s, and has been hardly shown or been made available abroad. The premise for The Secret Service, as those are familiar with the show, is difficult to summarise, so here goes. The Secret Service sees an unlikely secret agent, priest Father Stanley Unwin, tackle on crimes and espionage cases for the Bishop, the British Intelligence Service Headquarters Operation Priest. Unwin, whose cover is safely protected as a priest, is aided by his sidekick and vicarage groundskeeper to Unwin's manor, Matthew Harding. When undercover, Matthew speaks with Yorkshire accent, but drops this whenever he is acting as an undercover intelligence operator. Unwin possesses a remarkable shrinking device named Minimizer, which was given to him by his late friend Professor Humboldt, and is disguised as a religious book. From when Unwin was given this book, he has acted ever since as an agent for British intelligence. Whenever they are called into service, Unwin and Matthew use the device to aid in their ability to investigate crimes and injustice taking place, with Unwin's suitcase capable of taking a shrunken Matthew aboard and his 1970 Model T Ford Gabriel. Bishop's agents are ready to tackle whatever manner of nefarious plots that threaten the security of Britain and wider world affairs. If Unwin was ever on a mission and found himself in a difficult situation, Unwin would break into his Unwinese to confuse his enemies and to get out of tight spots. The unconventional manner of the main protagonists was aimed so villains would be unlikely to suspect an amateur priest, his suitcase, or his shrunken sidekick. Their eccentricity and matter of appearances enable Unwin and Matthew to succeed in all manners of conflict and situations. Got all that? The origins behind the Secret Service began when Gerry Anderson was at Pinewood Studios when he was working on his 1969 feature film Doppelganger when he bumped into Stanley Unwin. Unwin was working on Chitty Chitty Bang Bang at the time, and as it turned out, Anderson was a big fan of Unwin when he performed his various radio performances in the 1950s. Anderson was keen to use Unwin and his Unwinese in his next SUPERMARIONATION series, as Anderson's production company Century 21 were looking for a new series to come up with following the end of Joe 90. Although Anderson's colleagues were unsure this was a suitable concept for the series, Anderson pressed on and convinced his team to use Unwin for the centre of the premise of the next series. Unwin was an actor who was renowned for speaking his gobbledygook language on radio and on screen, usually in times when he was speaking a mangled form of English, in which many of the words he used were spoken in a humorous and playful manner. Continuing on with the espionage theme set in Joe 90, the Secret Service ends up feeling like a clash between Joe 90 and Father Brown, set in the present day of 1969, the only SUPERMARIONATION series not to be set in the near future other than Supercar. One other inspiration for the series came from an episode of Joe 90, which featured a very similar undercover parish priest who was attempting to thwart a group of antagonists operating under a hidden gravestone at a church. The lighter touches and atmosphere of the unorthodox shepherd, combined with the apparently deaf reverend acting as the secret agent, with the filming location done at a local church from the Century 21 studios in Slough, provided the blueprint for what was to come for the 7th SUPERMARIONATION series. Scaling back to a contemporary era setting, less sci-fi hardware elements, and more sentimental character work that had started with Joe 90 was utilised further with the Secret Service. By the time the Secret Service entered production in August 1968, almost immediately after the end of Joe 90's production, the SUPERMARIONATION programs were becoming increasingly expensive to make for the investor of Anderson's Century 21 company, ITC Entertainment. This offered the possibility of blending SUPERMARIONATION with a hybrid approach of using puppets to interact with real sets, props, and with exterior location work. The team also experimented using live-action scenes in several shots, including the real Stanley Unwin driving the Model T and for scenes of Unwin walking. This aided in developing the next stage of SUPERMARIONATION, of interacting characters in shots it would not have been possible to achieve with puppets convincingly. Several new puppets were sculpted for the Secret Service. The Stanley Unwin puppets, matching the actor virtually identically, the Bishop, and Unwin's housekeeper, Mrs. Appleby. The repertory puppets based on the newly proportioned style used by Century 21 since 1967 continue to be recycled, creating the style of SUPERMARIONATION guest characters to be a repertory form of performers. Various puppets used to portray main protagonists throughout Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, and even on one occasion with Joe 90, appeared as numerous guest characters throughout. Not even a change of hair colour and classes could disguise the fact that the puppet chosen to play Bishop Agent Blake was none other than the Captain himself. Gerry and Sylvia Anderson, as had much been the case with Joe 90, were less hands-on with the production of the Secret Service, as they were simultaneously working on the post-production of their doppelganger film due for a release in mid-1969. The writing team for the Secret Service was overseen by longtime Anderson writer and script editor Tony Barwick. Voice work for the puppets retained many of the same voice artists who had provided guest characters in Joe 90, featuring the talents of Gary Files, Jeremy Wilkin, Keith Alexander, and also David Healy. David Graham returned to the Andersons for the final episode of the series to voice various guest characters. Directing the Secret Service proved to be a new experience for the Century 21 production team. Filming the exterior location filming was completed first, usually in and around the local surrounding towns from the Century 21 studios in Slough, before work was done on the puppetry scenes, as the model work was achieved by the visual effects units. The team found this approach rather back to front from their usual approach of filming, yet took to the challenge of recreating live-action backdrops and scenes to match in their puppetry sets with attention to detail. Barry Gray once again provided the musical scores for the series, supplemented with the Mike Sam singers for the vocals of the opening and closing titles. The theme music for the series was once stated by Gray to be his favourite composition across all his contributions to the Gerry Anderson series. In common with all the Anderson programmes Gray composed for, various tracks composed for earlier SUPERMARIONATION series, particularly Stingray and Joe 90, can be heard throughout the Secret Service. The programme was planned to run for 26 episodes. After Anderson screened the first episode, once it was completed in December 1968, to the head of ITC Entertainment, Sir Lew Grade, Grade ordered the immediate cancellation of the series after Father Unwin broke into his Unwinese about 15 minutes into the episode, claiming that American audiences would not understand what the Unwinese was all about. And with 10 episodes in the can and another 3 ready to shoot, Lew Grade ended the Secret Service after 13 episodes, much to Anderson's disappointment, for a reaction that was in total contrast to Grade's verdict watching the opening episode of Thunderbirds. Based on this, Anderson was ordered by Grade to dispense working with puppets and make the move into live action for his next series. This led to the dismissal of the puppet unit at Century 21, some of which had been with the company for over a decade, to be laid off. The puppet units were closed down in January 1969, and the set was turned into an expansive model filming unit for Anderson's first live-action TV series. ITC Entertainment were not enthusiastic to promote the Secret Service. The programme was screened in as little as 3 regions across the UK from 1969 until 1975, albeit sporadically in varying scheduling hours, from Sunday afternoon slots to weekday Monday morning viewing hours. As the Secret Service was now the 7th SUPERMARIONATION series, and as many regions were still yet to pick up Joe 90, the programme would have struggled to fight for space in the schedules against Century 21's other and arguably more popular programmes. The series received little in the way of merchandise, and the merchandise that there was, such as the dinky Model T Ford and the 2 original published novels, received disappointing sales. Vintage merchandise for the Secret Service has now become highly prized collector's items. I'm not exactly sure what I make of the Secret Service. Whilst totally bizarre and eccentric, yet still charming and engaging to watch, I find it quick to judge it as the series that killed the SUPERMARIONATION. Whilst probably my least favourite SUPERMARIONATION series, There are still aspects about the series to enjoy, and it still possesses good storytelling and interesting moments. Grade's decision to axe the Secret Service was not done simply out of hearing Unwin speak his gobbledygook. I'm sure Grade was well aware of the potential Stanley Unwin as an actor had for the series to sell as. I believe there were various aspects Grade disliked about the series, and its sellable appeal for its premise, bizarre nature, and unlikely characters. Grade, I believe, was thinking in terms of selling the program as a businessman. In 1968, the SUPERMARIONATION programs were also becoming increasingly harder to sell into the American market, whilst Viable XL5 was the only series that achieved a network sale to NBC. The following SUPERMARIONATION programs were only able to reach American syndication, making this financially less viable for ITC Entertainment. Many of the other ITC series were selling to networks. The Saint, Danger Man, The Prisoner, and The Champions, for example, were all being picked up. If Grade believed that he was struggling to sell SUPERMARIONATION by 1968 and felt that the Secret Service lacked appeal to the American market, this may have helped in his decision to end the series early. In its country origin, with Joe 90 struggling to appear in the schedules as it fought for space against its predecessors, the Secret Service was unlikely to be much more sellable in the UK. Grade was well aware that the Andersons could work on both puppetry as well as live actors with their doppelganger film, and was also aware that the Andersons were already interested in producing live action in the first place. This gave Gerry and Sylvia Anderson their wish they had been hoping for many years. Now that their puppet empire had become so massive, and as their programs were evolving to become increasingly more sophisticated and lifelike, it seems suitable for now that the Andersons would finally forge into live-action television. I believe the series would have succeeded better if it was aimed at an adult audience who would have given the series more of a chance to explore its themes and plots posed in the series. However, as this was made by a long line of filmmakers who produced puppet shows, it was always going to have been aimed at a mere children's audience. Had young audiences really wanted to look up at Father Unwin as a role model and his housekeeper Mrs. Appleby in any way as a Tracy brother or Lady Penelope, combined with the lack of hardware and high-tech vehicles in the Secret Service, how would audiences have latched onto the program as audiences had devoured the merchandise seen in Stingray, Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet earlier in the decade? By the time the series was beginning to air in the regions it did, the Andersons and Century 21 were already hard at work on their first live-action series. Many of the cast and crew who worked on the series would transition their roles to work on UFO, which started production only a few months after the end of the Secret Service. The Model T Walker Gabriel appeared in several episodes of UFO, and various tracks composed by Barry Gray for the Secret Service frequently appeared in the two live-action Anderson series Gray composed for. SUPERMARIONATION would return in various different formats, future Anderson programs and television appearances, alongside specially shot documentaries in tribute to Anderson's cult classic television programs. In the years that eventually followed, videos and DVDs have been released of the Secret Service, alongside various posters, CDs and vinyl soundtracks. The program has also been released in collection sets alongside the other SUPERMARIONATION series in physical media, in print, and has been made available for streaming on ITVX and ITV Retro. The series has also been an interesting watch for viewers who have discovered it over the years through these mediums. It's interesting to note that at one stage Anderson described the Secret Service to be his favourite series out of all his many programs. For its time, although unfairly treated by its owners, the Secret Service was the natural evolution of both SUPERMARIONATION and Gerry Anderson's career, which brought about the end of an incredible era of filmmaking of a string of captivating and visually pioneering puppet programs, television shows, the like of which have never been bettered.